Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Deanne Jones. I'm the project director for Strong Readers Act, and I am excited to have everyone here today. I know you've been anxiously awaiting to hear about all the changes and updates to our Oklahoma literacy law. So we are going to go through some slides. If you were at the presentation that I did at Inspire or at the administrators conference, it'll be very similar. We'll just have a few updates that we'll give in addition to the information that I gave at that time. We will stop a couple points during this presentation to answer some questions. So if you have any questions during the presentation, just put them in the chat and Megan will get those to me and we will talk about some of those. So I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation with you right now and we will work our way through this. So there's my contact information if you need contact information for me. This is my phone number, and then this is the email that can be answered by anybody on our literacy team so that we can get you answers as soon as possible. Our session goals for today are to understand the requirements for kindergarten through third grade students under the Strong Readers Act. We're going to discuss all the changes that came about with Senate Bill 362 and understand all of the documentation and reporting. We have the first change is the purpose. The old purpose for RSA included some wording about things that had to be completed by the completion of third grade. And since third grade retention is now taken out of the law, this is our new purpose. The Strong Readers Act aims to strengthen literacy among Oklahoma students by integrating reading proficiency into the criteria for grade level progression, ensuring appropriate instructional support, and maintaining clear communication with families about student progress. So mainly, we are just aiming to strengthen literacy and ensure instructional support for those kids who need some extra support and maintain communication with families about their progress. Third grade retention is the biggest change that's happening due to the new legislation. Senate Bill 362 removed third grade retention from the Oklahoma literacy law. So beginning with this school year, beginning with the 24-25 school year, third grade retention will be handled just like any other grade in your district. It's whatever your district policy is to determine retention or promotion. You will no longer have state requirements that you follow for third grade. So with that going away, we have lots of other things that you will no longer have to keep up with. So no longer needed will be good cause exemptions. I've had lots of phone calls and texts and emails asking about our good cause exemptions going away. And they are going away, but the reason they're going away is because the retention is going away. So you do not have to have good cause exemptions for those students to be promoted. You also no longer have to keep a portfolio on your students who are scoring below level at the beginning of third grade, because once again, that was an alternate pathway to promotion and you don't have to show those things to the state anymore. We will no longer have RSA criteria on the OSTP because we don't need it. We're not looking at that to determine promotion or retention in third grade. You'll no longer have to document the pathways for promotion or retention. So once again, third grade will be handled just like any other grade in your school. It's whatever your district policy is. Reading plan. The reading plan is, there have been lots of changes in the reading plan. You already had to do a reading plan. It usually opens a little earlier in the summer. Due to all of the changes that we've had to make to it, it is still not open. So it's usually due August 31st, but since it's still not ready to be open yet, once it gets live and opened, we will then look at it to determine if we need to extend this timeline to see if we need to give districts a little more time to get that done. The Strong Readers Survey also saw some changes. So previously this was called the RSA Survey and it was in single sign-on. It's still in single sign-on, but we're just calling it the Strong Reader Survey now. You still have the beginning of the year report, and here's just a couple little changes to that. You're going to have to name your dyslexia screener that was used. Previously, we asked you that at the end of the year, but now that's just been bumped to the beginning of the year report. The number of students that qualified for exemptions is going to be asked, and we'll talk about exemptions a little bit more in depth a little bit later on. But the exemptions were added, and we're going to ask you in the beginning of the year report how many qualified for these exemptions, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. We have an end of the year report that you already had, and here's just a couple extra things that are going to be asked on that end of the year tab in the survey. It's going to ask about the number of students who were enrolled in your district for less than 2 years, and the number of students on an IEP who demonstrated grade level proficiency. This will be a new tab in the survey. Is a summer school report. This is brand new. We didn't previously have one, and we new legislation asked for some information about summer school, so we're adding a tab. It's going to ask about the number of students that attended your summer school. We're going to go into a little bit more depth on some of these new reporting requirements. The first one is the annual district plan, and this is the one that saw the most changes. So just some additional things that it's going to ask you. The first thing is you already had a timeline on your district plan, but we're going to be asking for some additional dates in your timeline. We're going to be asking for your diagnostic assessment. This wasn't required to be listed in your plan. There were a lot of districts that went ahead and put it in, but it wasn't required. And now with the new legislation, it is required. So we will ask what diagnostic assessments you will be using there. Supplemental resources for Tier 1 instruction. This one isn't asking about intervention materials. This one is asking about supplemental resources that you're using for Tier 1. So an example of this would be if I am a second grade teacher and I am using HMH for the district is using HMH for our Core 1 instruction, but we've decided we need some extra phonemic awareness instruction. So we've purchased Heggerty PA to use. So that would be an example of a supplemental resource because everyone is getting that instruction. I'm using it in my Tier 1 for every student for some supplemental instruction on top of our core instruction. So that's specifically what resources that one's going to be asking you about. The next one's going to be asking some more questions about additional instruction. We already asked you some, but this one specifically is asking your average daily time for additional instruction in school-wide intervention. So this means something that an extra intervention time that everyone's participating in. An example of this would be if your school does walk to read or something similar to that. That's what you would be answering on this question. The next one's the number of staff working with students to implement the strong readers provision. This one, we just want to know staff. So it could be your general ed teachers, your special ed teachers, any kind of reading specialists, interventionists, paraprofessionals that's working in like a literacy lab or reading lab to provide those interventions for your students. But what we don't want you listing here is volunteers. You know, if you just have this community volunteer who comes every other Friday or something, we don't want those people listed here. We want staff that are in regular times. They are regularly working directly with students. Next, we're going to have some more dates about specific parent communications. There'll be a line where you have to answer that on your district plan. And then intervention time for specific student groups. It's going to ask more. I know there's one that's about how much time IEP students are receiving for intervention. So you'll have a few more questions about intervention time. The next report is the third grade promotion retention report. This one is located in the WAVE. So this is the one that populates for you your third graders who did not pass the RSA criteria on the state test. This one will be, we will have this test this fall because it's reporting on our third graders from the previous school year. So you will have this one this fall. After this fall with this one, this will be the last time you will fill out this report because we won't have third grade retention anymore. So last year to fill out this report. This is a brand new component. We have some website requirements for your district. these things are gonna have to be posted on your website by September 1st regarding the previous school year. So you won't do this one this school year. You're gonna start tracking these things and getting these ready to post next September 1st regarding this school year. You're gonna post your board policy to implement the provisions of the Strong Reader Act. And by grade, you're gonna put the number and percent of students in K-3 who did not meet the grade level standard on the screener, who've been enrolled in the district for fewer than 2 years, who demonstrated grade level proficiency on the screener, and who are on an IEP and demonstrated proficiency on the screener. So we are going to create a unified format and post it on our website sometime in the next year. And you will use our format and just plug your numbers into it and post this information on your website by September 1st. So this year, you just need to make sure that you're collecting this information and collecting this data so that you will have this to post by next September 1st. Funding, we did see a little bit of, we did see $4.5 million increase in Strong Readers funds for this year's budget, which gives us a total of $17.5 million that we have for Strong Readers. One of the things to note here is that we have an updated funding checklist. It will be available. It's available right now. It went live today. We have this updated funding checklist on our Strong Readers webpage, and you can find this, and you will notice there's a few changes, and we have some program codes that you'll need to use to document certain things. Another reminder is that if you are a district that receives more than $2,500 of Strong Readers funds, you must spend 10% of those funds on Science of Reading professional development from an approved OSDE vendor. Those you can find those on our website. And this is one of the things where we also have the updated, you'll need to check the funding checklist because we have a new program code that you're going to use to differentiate any funds that you're spending toward this 10%. So if it's the things that you're using for registration for the professional development or travel associated with the professional development, those will use the new program code that is on our funding checklist. So make sure that if you're not the person who handles the finances at your school, make sure that those financial people are aware that we do have a new checklist with some new codes to use. There's no change on this. This is just how the multi-level prevention system that we use in Oklahoma of Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 instruction. This does not have any change. Tier 1 is just our 90 minutes of instruction on grade level. Tier 2 is the targeted instruction where we're giving some supplemental instruction to students who need some supplemental. And Tier 3 is our intensive intervention. We'll go into a little bit more depth on these. Tier 1 is our is the instruction that every student is receiving. And the kids who are just receiving Tier 1 are the students who are scoring at 40th percentile or above. All the other tiers are in addition to the 90 minutes of this core instruction. So if a student's on Tier 2 or Tier 3, they're also to receive the Tier 1 instruction in their which is by the general education teacher, and it is 90 minutes. It does not have to be uninterrupted. We understand if you do 45 minutes and then you have to go to lunch or PE and you come back and do another 45 minutes. We just don't want to see little, 10 minutes here and 10 minutes there. Make it as large a chunks as you can make work into your schedule. Students who are scoring on the Tier 1 do not have to have an intervention plan, which you will see it does call it now a Student Literacy Intervention Plan, or SLIP, which was formerly known as an IPRI. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. Tier 2 plus differentiation is the students who are scoring between the 26th and 39th percentile. These students do require an intervention plan. You do have to put them on the SLIP. And it's recommended that you're seeing them 2 to 4 days a week in small groups, like 6 to 8 students. But this is the only extra tier that this extra instruction can be can occur during tier 1 instruction time. So this can just be the general education teacher pulling these kiddos to a table at the back of the room during some tier 1 instruction time and giving them a little bit of extra help. These students are kind of just on watch that between the 26th and 39th percentile. They're not showing significant deficits, but they are requiring a little bit of extra help. So this is the only one that can be during that 90-minute block. If you go to tier 2, which is our supplemental instruction level, this is the students who are scoring between the 11th percentile and the 25th percentile, or it could also be those tier 1 plus, and they weren't seeing growth with just that amount of supplemental instruction. So now you're going to move them to tier 2. Tier 2 is at least 15 minutes in addition to the tier 1. So they're still getting that 90 minutes of instruction, but you're giving them at least an additional 15 minutes of instruction. This can still be the general education teacher. It just has to be outside of that 90-minute block, or it can be an interventionist either pushing into the class or pulling them out separately. Tier 3 instruction is the students who are scoring between the 1st and 10th percentile, or it could be students who were previously receiving tier 2 instruction and you weren't seeing the progress with them that they needed to have. So you're going to push them down to the tier 3, which is our intensive intervention group. These students do require an intervention plan. They require a SLIP plan. And these students need to be at least 30 minutes, and it needs to be daily and as smaller groups as your staff can handle. We recommend 1 to 3 students per group, and these need to be pulled out. Your general education teacher cannot handle given this kind of intensive intervention. They really need to be pulled out separately in as smaller groups as you can, giving this intensive intervention in the areas that they need help in. Megan, I'm going to pause right there for a second. Are we seeing any questions about anything that's that we've discussed so far?
So we do have some questions coming in the chat, and Melissa has been very good about responding to them. Melissa, do you have any that we need to speak out about?
Probably the biggest thing is remember that what we are providing here are recommendations based on best practice and research. So times for interventions, how they should be provided, those are recommendations. One question that's come up is who should be providing, especially our tier 3 interventions. Should that be a para or a volunteer? Our neediest students need our most qualified teachers. Paras absolutely should not be providing tier 3 intervention. These are students that are more than a year behind their classmates. And unless that is a para that has received very specialized training, for example, they are qualified for Take Flight, which is a tier 3 intervention, that makes sense. But as a general rule, our paras are not the ones that have received that more intensive training. That should be our certified qualified teachers, whereas paras might be taking the rest of the students for some crowd control type activities or some ongoing practice activities, while our certified teachers are providing the intervention that is needed for these students to close that gap. I will continue answering. I saw a bunch more questions pop up as I was talking, so I will continue answering those in the chat while Deanne goes on with our information. The only other thing that's asked repeatedly is, will we be sharing slides? We'll be sharing the recording and any notes to this on the website. We've given that website Strong Reader Schools. You can also go to what you're used to with RSA coordinators, and it will automatically link to that updated website.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, let's get back to it. So we're going to talk a little bit about assessments. First up is the universal screener. This part is not a change from what we previously had under RSA. The universal screener, students in K through 3 are going to be screened at least three times a year, beginning, middle, and end of the year. And this is what we're using to identify our students who are at risk of reading difficulties. The beginning of the year, you're going to report your numbers back to us on your beginning of the year report October 1st. You're going to do the middle of the year screening We don't collect those numbers. And then you'll have the end of the year screening, and those numbers are reported to us May 31st. The only thing that's new about this is we do have a 30-day window now, where when you have your universal screening, you will have 30 days, you have a 30-day timeline to get the student intervention plan into place. The students who are found to have reading deficit on the screener, if they're scoring below the 40th percentile on the universal screener, then you will give them a screener for the characteristics of dyslexia using one of our approved screening assessments within 30 days of the end of the universal screening window. The parents have to be notified of these results within 15 days. Okay, so we will have some further guidance maybe coming out about that soon, but just know that we do now have a 30-day timeline in place. Another thing about the screener, one thing that's going to be a little bit different this year is our kindergarten considerations. Previously, kindergarten was allowed to take the screener at the beginning of the year, but then you didn't have to give them the dyslexia screener at the beginning of the year or put them on intervention plan. You could wait until that mid-year screener to give them the dyslexia screener and then see if they qualify to be put on intervention plan. With the new legislation, that consideration for kindergarten has been taken away. So now kindergarten will follow the same rules as all of the other grades. They will be given both screeners. They'll give the universal screener and the dyslexia screener at the beginning of the year screening window. And if they are below the 40th percentile, they should be put on a student literacy intervention plan within 30 days, just like all the other grades. These are our universal screening assessments that are approved for both universal screening and the characteristics of dyslexia screening. There's no change to this. These are the same 9 that were approved last year. So you have these 9 that you can use for both. And then we have an additional 3. These 3 can be used as your universal screener. But if you're using these as your universal screener, you have to also identify one of the other screeners to use for your dyslexia screener. This middle one, the ELQA, is also only for kindergarten. So if you're identifying this one for your kindergarten, you would have to have a different screener for your other grades. This is brand new with our new legislation, and it is the exemptions to strong readers. So the new legislation provided some exemptions for students who it may not be best practice to be taking our universal screeners. So these students are, we have 4 criteria that they could meet to be exempt. The first one is if they are participating, if their IEP designates them that they take the OAP and they are taught with alternative methods. If their primary expressive or receptive language is sign language or Braille. And then the last one is our EL students. They have to be identified with a state approved identification assessment, and they have to have had less than 1 year of instruction in an EL program. There is documentation that you have to fill out for these. If you have a student that qualifies for one of these, we do have an exemption form, and it is on our website. You can access that on our website. You will fill that out and document that they are exempt. And this exemption provides them exemption from taking the screener and from being placed on an intervention plan, because these students are already being serviced with interventions through their IEP or through their EL program, their EL plan. So when you fill out these exemptions for a student, you only have to fill out the exemption form once with the, and it would be good through 3rd grade. With the exception of the bottom one, because that one's only good for 1 year, because they have to have had less than 1 year of instruction in an EL program. So that exemption would only be good for 1 school year. But the top 3, if you fill that out when they're, say in 1st grade, then you don't have to fill that documentation out again. That would carry them through 3rd grade. It just needs to stay in their permanent folder. But you would need to count them in your numbers every year. When you're doing your beginning of the year report, and you're reporting your numbers to us of how many students you have that qualify for each exemption, you would need to count them every year. They are exempt. You just don't have to fill out the documentation each year. The next assessment that we use, so we use the universal screener, we use a characteristics of dyslexia screener, and then you have a diagnostic assessment. So your diagnostic assessment would be something you'll be using with your students who are scoring below the 40th percentile, your students that are put on the SLIP plan. You would need to give them a diagnostic assessment. This is used to see what their deficits are so that you know what interventions you need to be providing for these students. And then we have progress monitoring. The recommendation for progress monitoring frequency of our students is for tier 2, we recommend monthly, and for tier 3, we recommend weekly. This is not new. This is not a change. This was the previous recommendations last year as well. So this is new. It's a new name
And-
and a little bit of new stuff. Yes.
Can I stop you before you go to a next
Yes.
section? Because there's a
Talk
couple
about
of questions that we need to address.
Okay.
One of the questions, and maybe somebody's misheard, I'm trying to find it. Somebody has heard something about using a different screener for different grades. Could you clarify that?
The reason and I don't know if this is where the confusion came from, but the ELQA is only approved for kindergarten. So if you're using the ELQA, it is only approved for kindergarten. You would need to have a different screener for your other grades. You think is that what the question is? Maybe
That could
addressing
be,
there?
no, it is, yeah, it's actually strongly recommended that as long as a screener is available for those grades, that you are able to show vertical growth, that you don't want to go from screener A to screener B to screener C to screener D from grade to grade to grade. The exceptions would be when a screener is not available, for example, the ELQA, which is only available for kindergarten. And then you would have to move to a different screener beginning 1st through 3rd. So again, that's a local decision on what's done for each grade, but no, you do not have to have a different one for each grade level. So we apologize if that was confusing. A lot of questions about the statewide screener. I can only answer it so many times, so let's just put it out there. Yes, we are looking at a statewide screener. Yes, we are still trying to get the contract. Yes, we are very aware of the timeline, but we can only control what we can control. We are still under a non-disclosure agreement until the contract is signed, so we are not able to provide that. So we've had a couple of districts saying, well, should we just go ahead and we need to get something signed this week? Please do what you need to do for your district. And we will get that information out as soon as we're able. It might be that, we have districts that want to pilot something or try something in addition to. But for right now, that's really as far as we can go. And then would you want to address probationary promotion and moving forward?
For last year's students?
Yes.
So if you had a student that you did probationary promotion on last year, I'm assuming the question is talking about ongoing documentation. So if you promoted a student from a 3rd grader from last year, right now you're saying that you are still going to get you still need to provide them interventions. They obviously need some help, and so we're going to continue to give them that help when they're in 4th grade and in 5th grade, and go ahead and document those interventions. That will be going away, obviously, because now we will not be doing probationary promotion anymore. But for those students who just were previous 3rd graders this past school year, absolutely we need to continue giving them some extra help and document that help. Was there any other questions around that, Melissa?
Lots of questions about diagnostic assessments. Will we be providing a list, and where can we find that kind of information?
Okay. So we don't have diagnostic assessments you can choose those. We did send out, we had a few of those listed in the newsletter that went out this last time. Just some examples, but we don't have an approved list of diagnostic assessments. It's not like our universal ones. The diagnostic ones, it's up to the district's discretion to decide which one you think best fits the needs of your students. It is local control on that, and we don't have an approved list for those. And that being said, that's the same thing with the progress monitoring as well. We don't have a set list of, assessments that you use for progress monitoring. That also is up to your district to choose whatever works best during your intervention groups, what skills you're working on. You want to progress monitor on the skills that you are working with.
So a couple of examples of diagnostic assessments, and of course, this is not meant to be a recommendation, but there's several that are out there that are free or at low cost. One would be that if, for those of you that have gone through letters, you can look at the phonological or phonics surveys that are found in the back of your printed teacher's manuals. That would be an example of a diagnostic. Those of you that have experience with Literacy First and have been trained to properly use that assessment, not just somebody handed you a sheet and said go, because there are some nuances there that you need to have gone through that training for. That would be another example of a diagnostic, certainly not free, but one that many of you are familiar with. There are some publishers that sell interventions that have made diagnostic assessments free. For example, Really Great Reading. If you go on their website and you just Google Really Great Reading Diagnostic, you can find all of their diagnostic assessments available for free. And finally, at low cost is a book from the Consortium on Reading Excellence, or CORE, C-O-R-E. They have a great book called Assessing Reading Multiple Measures. Their third edition. It is available on Amazon and has all kinds of different things. What you're really looking for, if you recall, your screening assessment lets you know if the student is at risk or not at risk. And generally, is this a word reading issue? Are they reading with accuracy? They may be reading, if they're making a lot of mistakes, that's not accurate. Maybe they're able to read a short passage, but they're making a lot of errors or only reading like 10 words in that minute. We often see that. Those are generally word recognition difficulties. Those phonics surveys and going on down to the phonological survey gives you an idea of exactly where that student needs to be working with, because remember, those skills need to be taught sequentially. If not, then you are losing a lot of power with teaching those students and getting it in that long-term memory. If it is a student who is able to decode the words well, fluently, at a good rate, and with high accuracy of 95% or above, that is more likely an issue with comprehension or vocabulary, what's going on there. And so what can we do? Do we need graphic organizers to help understand what's going on in a text, being able to organize our thoughts? But trying to figure out those two areas, and then especially in those foundational skills, those diagnostic assessments, and this is not the first time we've talked about them. We have preached on diagnostic assessments every year for at least as long as I've been here, so at least the last 7 years, of how important and critical those things are. So really the only difference here is that it is one of those things that we are not required to report them out on this slip that Deanne is talking about. So this is not a new thing. This is not an unusual thing. It's just that people are now sitting up and paying attention because we're having to write the name of it down. So, but there's a lot of them that are out there and that are available, a lot of them for free. This is not a huge undertaking. A lot of the assessments that you have purchased, the interventions you've purchased often have a placement assessment, like where do we need to start? That is also a diagnostic assessment, and a great one, because it's letting you know exactly where in your intervention program to get started. I also want to say I'm seeing so many questions coming in. We're still trying to hit them, but if we don't get to all of them before we're done, we will be printing out this chat and responding with an FAQ posted on the website to address a lot of these, because a lot of these are being repeated. And so we can only get to so many of them at one time. So just go ahead and keep writing your questions. But if we don't get them in there, I promise we will get those answered. Okay, Deanne, take us away on slips.
Okay, back to the slip. The slip is the newly named intervention plan, and it is named the Student Literacy Intervention Plan, or SLIP for short. So no longer an IPRI. These are the things that are going to be on the slip. Some of these were already on there. There's a couple new ones. You're going to include the additional in-school instruction time. You're going to include the tutorial instruction time. This could be something like Saturday school or before or after school tutoring, summer school. If these things are necessary and if you have funds to do them, you're going to list those things on the slip. This is where you're going to also be required to list what diagnostic assessment you're using with the student and what progress monitoring assessment you are using with the student. This is just a new little piece that's going to ask about what high quality instructional materials you're using with your students. And then the last one is you're going to have to provide access to free online evidence-based literacy instructional resources that can support the students' literacy development at home. We are working on this right now. We're hoping that we are going to be able to curate some kind of a list of free resources that we can then push out to you guys, and you can use that to give to your parents. This is another new piece. With the legislation, they have said that we are going to provide proficiency notice to parents. This is the reference to statute of where it is in the law. So we're using the 60th percentile. So we're going to notify the parents that the student has satisfied the requirements of the Strong Readers Act. This is going to be done yearly, and we are working to form a sample letter that will be posted on our webpage that you can use. So what this is going to look like is after you give the universal screener, if you have students at the beginning of the year, that universal screener window, if you have students who scored the 60th percentile or above, when you are notifying the parents of their scores, just like you're going to notify every parent of their student score. But if they're scoring above the 60th percentile or above, you're also going to have an extra letter that you're going to give that parent that says your student is scoring proficient on this, and that they are they've satisfied the requirements for this year, and that we will continue to monitor them. So I know one of the questions is going to be, are we still going to give this student the screener? And yes, even if they score this at the beginning of the year, you're still going to screen them mid-year and end of year. But we're just letting the parent know that this student is doing well. They are on the road. They are doing great. And so if the student scores 40th or below, they're going to be getting on an intervention plan. If they're scoring 60th or above, they're going to get a proficiency notice. If they're between that 40th and the 60th percentile, you're still going to notify those parents of their score, but they're trucking along, but they're not at what we would consider completely proficient yet, but they're also not demonstrating a deficiency. So you're still going to notify them what their scores are. But for the students who are 60th or above, they're going to get a proficiency notice. This letter is not posted yet, but we are working on that. We will have that one posted for you soon. So documentation, we've already went over all these. Let's just talk about it again. So the documentation that you're going to have this year is the parent notification of the screener results. You're going to notify all of them. If they're below 40th percentile, they're going to get a slip, including the results of their dyslexia screener. It's not listed on this slide, but also if they're above the 60th or above, they're going to get a proficiency notice. And then we're going to also document the exemption from screeners. This is a brand new piece as well. We are going to have a ban on 3Qing. So the new legislation put into effect, but it will not start this school year. It will start next school year, 25-26. That any teaching practices that use the 3Qing system model will be prohibited in Oklahoma. You may also hear this type of teaching model being called MSV, for meaning, structure, and visual. It could also be called balanced literacy, or it could be called whole language. So we will be working on guidance for this before the next school year. Hopefully by Christmas, we will have this out so that as you are making curriculum decisions for next school year, you can make sure that you are in compliance and not using materials that utilize this type of teaching model. So coming soon, you can be looking for updated forms. Just today, we had a lot of them go live on our website. So we do have some of our forms updated and available for you right now. We will also be working on the new administrative rules and the guidance for eliminating the 3 queuing practices. And we will be having the webinars like you are participating in today. Our website's going to be undergoing lots of overhaul soon. And another thing that we have going on is we have a team who just finished doing a review of a lot of intervention materials. Vendors were invited to submit their intervention materials for review, and our literacy team went over them, and we are working on compiling a list. And when that is ready, we will have it posted on our website. I do want to note that this is not an approval list, so you don't have to purchase one off of our approved list. This is just ones that we have looked at their research. We've looked at what they say they're addressing, and it will be a list that you can go to just for guidance. You're still free to use your Strong Readers funds to purchase any intervention materials that you think best fit the needs of your students. But if you are looking, say, I know my students need some phonemic awareness help, and I don't know where to look for that. This will be a list that you could come to our website and sort them by need. And if you put in phonemic awareness, it should bring you up a list of things that address phonemic awareness. Another little plug for our Literacy Heroes team. We do have 15 Literacy Heroes that work throughout the state. Last year, they were in 305 schools in our state. And if you would like to request help from a literacy hero, they can provide professional development. They can provide coaching for your reading teachers. There is a link that's on our literacy page where you can go and request a hero. I will be doing another webinar next Tuesday at 10 a.m. The link is posted on our website. You can also subscribe to the Strong Readers newsletter to stay updated. If you were already subscribed to the RSA newsletter, it is the same newsletter. We're just changing the title. You don't have to subscribe again. But if you are new to this, or you have an administrator or a co-teacher that needs to stay updated and they're not subscribed yet, they can subscribe to that newsletter. Starting in September, I will be hosting a monthly call, just like I did last year with the RSA monthly calls. And they will be on the second Tuesday of each month at 1 p.m. There's my information again. And let me go back. So that was a whole lot of information. What other questions do we have now, Melissa?
Will the monthly webinars be recorded and posted?
Yes, they will. This webinar is being recorded, and we will record the one next week as well. And then starting in September, we will be recording those monthly ones and posting them. If you're not available to join us at 1 p.m. when they are live, you can always watch it later in the day.
Does everyone in the school need to use the same diagnostic assessment? In other words, could the reading interventionist use something different than what a general education teacher might use in their classroom?
I think you can. I just think you need to make sure that you are being, you're going to have to list in the plan what ones you're using, but I do think you could list multiple if it's needed. But when you're giving one, you want to make sure that you're giving one that fits the needs of your students and what you're going to be using for intervention. For example, if I'm providing tier 3 intervention and I'm giving a diagnostic to my students and that's showing me what I need to be working with them on, that might look different than what a tier 1 student wouldn't necessarily need. That they've already passed the screener. Does that make sense how I'm explaining that? Melissa, anything to add to that?
No, I think you did well.
Yes, and then same kind of goes for hang on, same thing kind of goes for progress monitoring as far as that goes. So if you're using the same progress monitoring for all of your students, but you're not providing all of those students the same interventions, then you're probably missing the mark on that. Like my progress monitoring needs to be monitoring what I'm working with that student on. So if I'm I'm working with a small tier 3 group and I've been working on diagraphs, that's what I need to be progress monitoring. I need to see if they're making progress on the skills that I'm working with them on. So your assessments just need to match what instruction and interventions you're giving them.
lots of questions about 4th and 5th grade.
Okay. Specifically, are we continuing to monitor? Is that what we're asking?
Pretty much continuing to monitor, continuing to provide intervention, forms to use, those kinds of things. And some of that might
Yes.
just need to be updated as we're going through on the website too. But
Yes. We have not updated those, so we may need to do that. But just, basically, you're still just going to be documenting what intervention help you are giving those students. If they were passed on, they didn't pass the state test, but they passed due to one of those good causes, they still need to be provided some kind of intervention, and you just want to make sure that you're documenting that. We do need to update those forms, and we will try to get those updated and listed as soon as possible.
questions about how long it takes to upload the recordings for our meetings, which will be on the second Tuesday of every month at 1 o'clock. We try to get those uploaded within 24 hours. We had a lot of issues this last year with website access that we believe, we've at least been told that's been resolved. So as long as we have access to the website, we will get those uploaded within those 24 hours. Sometimes we can do it that afternoon. It just kind of depends on what's going on that day sometimes. As I'm sure you all are aware, sometimes we are just running from one meeting to another until about 6 o'clock at night. So as soon as we can get that on there, we will most certainly do that because we know you're looking for that. Let me take a stab real quick at the proficiency because I'm seeing a lot of questions and sometimes it just helps to hear it from a couple of different people. So we all know, and we've been doing it for a long time, that any student that is at the 40th percentile or below is demonstrating risk of a reading difficulty and therefore they are on a slip. Okay, so we have from 0 to 40th percentile. Well, I guess I could go this way. And then at the 60th percentile and above, so the other end of that spectrum, are students that are demonstrating what we're calling reading proficiency. So we've got this group from the 41st to the 59th percentile that really nothing's happening with. In other words, a lot's happening with them. They're getting good instruction in the classroom. They're getting good core tier 1 instruction. Our concern with when we saw in the legislation that we had to send home proficiency information to parents to say, hey, your kiddo is hunky-dory. They're doing great. Everything's just fine. When we are sending home, if a student's at the, let's say the 42nd percentile, and we send that kind of notice home to a parent, and then at the middle of the year, they slip down to the 38th percentile, which is only 4 percentile points, not a lot. And we see that happen often. What we don't want to put schools in the position of having to say, well, in August or October, you said my kid was doing great. And now you say that they're not doing great. What did you do wrong? How did you mess up my kid? That's never a good conversation to have with families, right? So when we look at alignment to our state test, 40th percentile has been traditionally a good cutoff for students who have the very basic foundational skills. They're still usually in that end of basic. They are able to function, but they are certainly not setting the world on fire if they're really right at that 40th percentile. They're able to go forward. And again, this is kind of that, we see this in a continuum that they move back and forth. 60th percentile, though, tends to be more on that line of we're getting to that proficiency level and we're really not as worried about them falling back. So if they're at that 60th percentile, the odds of them at the middle of the year, just 2 or 3 months later, stepping back so far that now we're having to put them on a reading plan are pretty significant. And if something like that has taken place, there is a significant problem. Either they've made a huge slip in where they were, maybe they've missed out on a month of school because of chronic absenteeism, or we've had some behavior issues or something that needs to honestly be addressed with families. It's not just we've seen a slight fluctuation and we just need to hold on. Does that make a little bit more sense? So if we see a student at the beginning of year that we send this 60th percentile proficiency notice home and they slip below 60th, maybe they're at the 55th by middle of the year, We don't need to do anything else. We don't need to send an alert to parent. We don't need to put them on a plan, anything like that. We'll just wait and keep monitoring like we do with all, as good teachers with all of our students. And at the next year, we'll see where we were and if we've slipped a little bit, or maybe we just were sliding around in that area. It's when we get below the 40th that we have to now go back and have that conversation of, hey, your child was doing okay, but they have not made the progress that we need to make. And here's what we need to do to help them out. Okay. We only have to send that proficiency note home once a year, either at the beginning of year or middle of year. Okay. Or you can do it at end of year, but you know, we all know end of year is really just kind of telling us where we ended up, and it's usually not going to be anything majorly new. A couple of people have pointed out this seems really redundant. We get it, but this is the way the legislatures have written this into the law. And so we have to send this home to make sure that parents are aware there's a difference between at risk for reading difficulty or being really secure in their understanding and proficiency for reading. And so that's why we see that gap there, and it's not just a one-line cutoff. Hopefully that helps a little bit with that. And I'm also going to say we have seen, we've probably got at least 100 questions in the chat that we probably still need to be able to go through. I know we will be having some follow-ups, and we will also be using these questions to provide any guidance for our next recording or for our next webinar. So we will have the recordings for both of these online. So if you were here today and you're like, okay, I just want to check to see if they've hit some other things, we will certainly have that available for you, because I know it's hard to give up 2 different hours. A lot of questions specific to certain certain screeners. Deanne, would you like to pull up the web page for our Strong Readers schools? And so that people can see where that technical guidance is, especially if they are new to dealing with Strong Readers or formerly RSA. Notice that we keep saying Strong Readers, not SRA, because that is already the name of assessment and that is beyond confusing. So we will be using the term Strong Readers. We will not be abbreviating it with an acronym. One less acronym to deal with is not necessarily a bad thing.
Okay, let me go share my page here. Okay, so this is the Strong Readers page. If you click on some of this, still all needs updated, but if you click on Strong Readers for Schools, which was previously called the Coordinators page, now it is Strong Readers for Schools. This is where you can see all of our updated information. This is the webinar links. Here's where you would click to join the newsletter. Here's our exemptions. This talks about our exemptions, and then this is the link to the form that you would fill out for exemptions. Some of these are updated. This is the new timeline, and this one is updated. This has all of our dates for all of the tests, all of the reporting for this school year. And that one is updated and ready to go. These are where you can go to link to single sign-on to access your reports. This is the implementation. This is not updated yet. All of the screeners, we will be working to update for the next school year, all of their implementation guidance. That's not updated yet. Strong Readers funding, this is the new checklist that I was talking about, where you can click to see the new funding codes that your financial office would definitely need to know to document all of your spending for Strong Readers. This is the new SLIP plan, which is right here. And then we also have the addendum. So clarification on this is on here as well. If you are doing something where your dyslexia screener is already included, like Amira, where the dyslexia screener is included, or you get it all done before, no matter which one you're using, if you get your dyslexia screener completed before you sign the intervention plan, you can just put your results of the dyslexia screener in this in the original SLIP plan, and there will be no need to fill out the addendum. If you put the intervention plan in place before you have your dyslexia screener results, then you would later need to go back and fill out this addendum to your SLIP plan so that, oh, that one didn't load. Okay, we'll check on that one. Then you would need to fill out the addendum. Coming soon, we still have the Strong Readers Family Guide. Working on that currently. We'll get that posted as soon as possible. And this is the dyslexia information, the family guide for dyslexia information. And that one should be updated and you can use that one. So this is our page and we will continue to work on it to get you guys everything updated that you will need for this school year. Anything else?
I think most everything we have either addressed or will need to address through some written guidance as we move forward, but I don't know that there is a way to hit most of this. Strong Readers Family Guide will be updated in the next couple of days. We are at this time unable to provide translations to other languages, including Spanish, for any of our documents. We have been checking into that. We are still trying to check into that, but that is not something that we have a capability of doing right now. So just to reiterate, when we say days, that is calendar days, not school days. And I believe that would be it. We will be sending out a special copy of the literacy newsletter as soon as the reading plan is up and running. The RSA survey that, or not RSA, Strong Readers survey, we'll be making that mistake all year for at least a year. Where we have the beginning of year report should be going live tonight. So you should be able to see that once you get students and ready and kind of see what the changes look like there. But I believe they were looking at the end of the week for the plan. So as Deanne said earlier, if we need to extend the deadline beyond August 30th, we likely will, but we are just waiting to make sure when we see that report go live so that we're not giving you multiple dates to deal with. So we know that that's high on everyone's minds. We do appreciate your patience. I know the programmers have been putting on a lot of extra hours, but it was definitely a lot of changes that were asked for in that legislation. Okay. We'll be tracking the 60th percentile letters sent home. I would keep those in cumulative files, but as of right now, that is not requested on any reports that will have to go out on single sign-on. We've not been asked to report that number back to the legislature, so nothing there. So thank you for your patience. We know there's a lot of questions that are there. Please feel free to send us any questions. The best way to reach out, you want to talk about I'll put the email address in the chat, Deanne?
Yes, I had that shown early on our slides and it is on our website. We do have a literacy inbox that you can email so that all of us have access to that email so that whoever's available, we can answer those and that might be a little quicker. If in case one of us is out of the office or something. And you can always call me or there is the phone number. I think Chelsea, our admin assistant's information is also listed that you can, she checks those inboxes for us as well and usually lets us know if there's something we need to get to. And she can also answer a lot of the questions she already knows the answer to. And if she doesn't, she definitely can find one of us that does. And so there's multiple ways you can reach out to us, email, or phone call.
The fastest and best way is generally that email inbox, as there are multiple people able to see that and get to it, as opposed to emailing each of us separately, which means that you're probably going to get different answers and take longer, or phone calls when somebody might be away from their desk or in a meeting at that time. So we will make sure that we get answers to the other questions out. We will probably be putting an FAQ on the website here pretty quickly.